So welcome along to our latest webinar, which is focusing on driver and team PR. We have a fantastic panel lined up for you. I'll introduce them in just a moment, but I have to say, as ever, thank you to our sponsors, New Channel Media. It's great that they've got involved because it means we can keep on doing this. So for all your sort of video production for motorsport, you can check them out at newchannelmedia.com. If you want to get involved, we have a hashtag as well. If you've been here before, you might well know it. It's hashtag MMW2021. And our email address is info@mmw2020@gmail.com. There's your housekeeping done. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our panel who will appear as if by magic.
Hello, Jenny.
Hi. Right, I'm gonna go round and introduce everybody. And well, so I have no idea how you're laid out on your individual screen. So I'm gonna go round in a circle and start with Head of Media and Comms for Venturi Racing. It's Liz Brooks. Liz, it's wonderful to have you on a webinar. I know you've done one before for us, so thank you for coming back. How's lockdown treating you now, Mark 3?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Jenny, and hello everybody, welcome to the webinar. Lockdown 3, I think for everybody it's a super tough time. I think as a parent it's an extra special challenge. I think juggling homeschooling and full-on work is yeah, it's a lot of plate spinning, but the fantastic news is that we have a race season to look forward to, and I know Adrian and I will already be flying out next Friday, which is amazing. So not too much to complain about, but very glad it's Friday, as I'm sure everybody else is.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me come to Adrian next then, because you've so beautifully introduced him already. I'll set him up. He's Head of Global PR and Comms for Jaguar. Adrian Atkinson, thank you so much for joining us as well. Are you keen that the Formula E season gets underway? You must be chomping at the bit.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having me. Really excited to get Formula E started. I think we've done 1 week of racing in about 52 weeks. So myself and the team are just really excited to get going. I think we're going to have to try and keep the drivers' feet on the ground when we get to Diriyah in a couple of weeks' time, because they're going to literally explode. I think it's going to be a tough one. It's super competitive this year. Lots of amazing drivers and amazing teams, and yeah, we've just been talking about racing for about 11 months. So I just really want to get back and get on that racetrack. All the protocols are going to be in place, as you would expect from Formula E and international sporting regulations at the moment, which is going to be tough on people. Lots of PCR tests, about 7.5 days in quarantine, in and out, but it'll be okay. And we're very lucky to do the jobs we do.
Next up, let me introduce you to the Head of Comms at Williams F1 team, Sophie Ogg. Now, Sophie's had her PCR test this morning. How's your nose feeling? Are you okay?
Yeah, first one of the year, and yeah, I'd kind of put them out of my mind after last season, but yeah, back in the swing of things, so ready to go.
Good stuff. And finally, Tabatha Valls-Halling is also here joining us. Where are you at the moment, Tabatha?
Yeah, hello, I'm in Italy, in Modena.
Beautiful. And you've had a busy start to the year because you've been doing loads of different films and production for a lot of the teams ahead of the season getting started. So things just starting to get really busy for you, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and it was about time too, because I was waiting for this moment. Now it's, yeah, when it gets busy, you say, oh my God, it's too busy. When it's not busy, you want it to be busy. But yeah, I prefer it busy. Soph keeps me busy most of the time. Yeah.
So Tabatha is director of her own company. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your company? And we'll come around to everybody and just talk about kind of what you do and how you started. So Tabatha, why don't you start? Tell us where you are now, but how you started as well.
Yeah, so press play. Well, I had the idea in my head for a long time when I was working in Formula One as a press officer. And at that time, F1 didn't let teams post videos. And I was like really annoyed about that. I was like, how can this be? It can't be true. One day I'll be able to. And well, it came to a point in F1 where they started to open up and you could start posting videos. And then I saw a chance. I said, oh my God, this could be like my chance to do what I've always wanted to do, because I love editing videos, I love filming. So yeah, that's how Press Play came like into life, I just decided to try and go for it and create my own business. And yeah, so now I create content, video content for teams, for drivers, and for whoever asked me for some video. But yeah, before that, I started in F1. Well, I've always loved motorsport, so it's always been like my dream job. And then I just decided to go for it, and you just can't, it's like you never give up. It's a really difficult world to get into. And when I was studying, there wasn't really anything to like study to get into motorsport. So I just studied journalism, but with an eye always on motorsport and trying to get in, writing to people, trying to contact people, trying to talk to whoever I could that knew people, because it is all about like who you know, like, and trying to get in. And then luckily enough, there was a Spanish team at the time trying to start up a team, Hispania Racing. And I thought, okay, if with a Spanish team I don't get into F1, this is it. I'm not even ever trying again. So I sent my CV like quite a few times. In the end, they replied, and that's where the Formula One adventure started.
Love that. And it's always fascinating to hear how you got started. Adrian, what about you? What's taken you to the very kind of top of comms with Jaguar?
Bit of a different path for me. I wanted initially to get into the music industry. I worked for a record company when I was at uni. Bit of an amateur DJ as well. You can probably tell with the vinyl behind me. Massive music fan. I then got really lucky. I got onto a graduate scheme at Nissan GB in their press office as a junior press officer, and learnt the ropes and had some amazing mentors there that helped me. And it was just as they were getting into motorsport. And actually my first motorsport event was tiny. It was the Nissan Micra Challenge Rally Series. But I managed to get the Daily Telegraph and Top Gear to come and cover that, and got some amazing coverage, and really got the bug from there on. Did some Le Mans, did some British touring cars with those guys, and then applied for a role in the WRC with Mitsubishi Rally Art, and did WRC for 5 years and was incredibly lucky. I backed some good horses and had 3 winners, Tommy Mäkinen, Richard Burns and Petter Solberg. And then from there, managed to eventually scratch the itch of Formula One, got approached to go to Bridgestone in the height of the tyre war with Michelin, and was head of comms for Bridgestone in initially F1 and then in GP2 and then MotoGP, with a massive team behind me of some incredibly talented people. And then I went out on my own. I worked in the drinks industry for a while with Martini and Bacardi. Was very lucky to do some more entertainment PR, which I really loved, with a few Hollywood A-listers, which was exciting times. And at that time, Martini sponsored Ferrari. They had a tiny logo on the nose cone of the car that nobody remembers, before they hit the big time with Sophie at Williams and were title sponsors. And yeah, again, incredibly lucky, get to work with Michael Schumacher and Kimi Räikkönen and Felipe Massa and people like that. So real dream come true. And then, yeah, got involved with the Jaguar project right at the start, initially just doing some consultancy, helping them as they were looking to get back into motorsport after a bit of a tumultuous episode in Formula One. And yeah, kind of stayed on and have been part of the furniture ever since, and really enjoy the job, really enjoy the series. I've got some incredible friends like Liz, who we go around the world together and keep ourselves sane, which is very important. And actually, as Tabs was saying, I think one of the key things for me is, and I know there's some questions about university degrees and experience, but actually for me, the big lesson that I've learned is building relationships is key to everything that you do. And the more people that you can get to know, I think that the better, and it helps your life, but it also helps your career. So that would be one piece that I would take away from today.
Thanks, Adrian. That's fascinating, isn't it? Everybody's got their own story to tell. Sophie, centre stage, what about you? Just tell us where you are now and how you got started.
Yeah, well, and thanks, Jenny, as well, for the opportunity to be part of this today as well, with a lovely group of people. So, as you mentioned, I'm head of F1 comms at Williams at the moment. So I've been in motorsport now for about 20 years, which makes me feel really old.
You're not old enough, Sophie. You must have started at 10.
I started when I was about 15, to be fair. So actually maybe a little bit more than 20 years, but let's not quibble over that one. But I started when I was about 15, just helping local race teams, and that was my sort of foot in the door. And as Adrian spoke about, that was where I started building my network, and it was that network of people that has helped me in every job that I've progressed through. So over those 20 years, I've worked team side, I've worked series side, I've also worked agency side as well, numerous sort of series, World Touring Cars, British GT, Formula BMW, a few series that are no longer in existence as well. And then about 10 years ago, I moved into Formula One with Williams, and I've been at Williams ever since, and currently have a very small but brilliant team that help me manage all the communications, social media, PR, and everything that we do, both at races, at the factory, when we can get to the factory, that is. And yeah, that's pretty much where we are now.
Great stuff. Liz, it must be your turn. Oh, she's on mute. Liz,
I'm on mute.
There we go. I do that all the time.
Is it a Zoom call if at least 2 people don't get to say you're on mute? It doesn't count, right? Otherwise, sorry, I was tip-tapping away trying to answer some of the fantastic questions that are coming through from you guys. So keep them coming. There is one theme that always flows through with these things that we do, Jenny, and that's obviously advice about, you know, how to break into it. But with regards to my own personal story, it's a funny one because it was a question of kind of time and place for me throughout my career. So I didn't finish university. I didn't have a conventional journey to this at all. I think it's fair to say I have kind of a low attention threshold at times, and sparkly new things always attract my attention. And at uni during the summer break one year, I got a job working at a temp agency just to, you know, earn a bit of extra money. And whilst I was at the temp agency, this fantastic PR job came in for this PR agency, and I loved the look of their clients. I was 19. I loved the look of their clients, and I sweet talked the owner of the temp agency into putting me forward for the job. He had like 6 or 7 other candidates. The criteria was ridiculous. It was like 2 years of experience and XYZ already. But I was like, look, you've got nothing to lose. Put me forward and, you know, let me see what I can do. And he put me forward, and lo and behold, I got the job. And that was my first kind of foray into agency life. And that agency led to another agency. And in that agency, they had a client called Kawasaki. And I was appointed as their account manager for road bikes, off-road, motorsport, and jet skis. I mean, what a combination of different things. And as a 20-year-old, that was incredibly exciting. And it was whilst I was working with Kawasaki that I got the opportunity to meet a gentleman called Eddie Jordan. And for those of you who are listening in who haven't heard the name Eddie Jordan or aren't familiar with Eddie Jordan, he was the team principal of a team called Jordan, which was based at Silverstone, which is now occupied by the very lovely Aston Martin Formula One team. And Eddie and I met because Eddie wanted to borrow a Kawasaki motorbike, and I was messing around on it outside, setting up for the cameraman, and, you know, just full of the confidence I think of a, you know, 20-year-old has in this situation. And I have to say, Jenny, I come from a very sporting family, but Formula One or motorsport was not something that we followed extensively at home. So we were more out doing stuff rather than necessarily sitting and watching it. So I didn't have any fear or kind of, you know, holy cow moment about being in this situation with somebody that could potentially have an impact on my career. So I was very relaxed and natural. And that's something that I would like to impart on anybody that's listening is, think about your reasons for wanting to get involved in motorsport in the first place. And being a fan is fantastic, but being a fan can sometimes lead you to feel exceptionally nervous and perhaps put more emphasis and pressure on a situation than it needs to. So remember that everybody is human, but think very hard about why you want to work in motorsport, and just feeling passionate about it isn't necessarily enough, I would say. So I met Eddie, and the long story short was we got on great. And a few weeks later, he offered me a job. And that was back in 2002. So Sophie, don't be feeling old, because that was my first show in Formula One was 2002. So I've been in it for a really long time. And since then, I've worked team side, obviously with the drivers. I've worked rights holder side, race promoter side, so the host cities that host the races, working with the governments and the local cities. I've worked brand side, the sport, actually working directly for Formula One. I've worked in Formula One, I've worked in support series like the Porsche Super Cup or the Mini Challenge, and now I spend most of my time working in Formula E alongside lovely people like Adrian and yourself, Jenny, and it's a fantastic environment to show off our trade.
Wow, so that gives everybody hopefully a little inkling into how people started. If you do want to ask a question, please feel free. The Q&A function is working. Liz has already been furiously typing. I think Adrian has as well. So get your questions in and let us know what you're thinking. A lot of them along the same kind of track of how do I get started? Where do I begin? Before we do some of the questions, I just want to get some of your life experiences to share, because you work with drivers, you work with teams, everyone thinks it's incredibly glamorous. I'm sure at times it can be. But could you each share with me and with everybody at home kind of a funny story or something that demonstrates that maybe it's not quite as easy to do your jobs as everybody thinks it might be? Adrian, can I come to you first? Have you got any cracking stories that you bash out around the Christmas table?
I've got lots of cracking stories, but actually in terms of the glamorous world of motorsport, at 1 o'clock I've got a 1-hour finance meeting about the financial year 21-22. So behind every champagne story of being on the podium and getting sprayed with champagne, there are a lot of hard work and effort that goes in behind. And I know people say that in our position, but it's so true. One of the things that I believe strongly in is that the people that make life and their jobs look easy, they're the ones putting in the hours. They're the ones putting in the graft. People like Lewis Hamilton, you see that little fraction of what that guy is doing in terms of his regime, his fitness, his ethics, and that's why he's so successful. I guess from my side, I was very lucky. I worked for a drinks brand, so when Kimi Räikkönen is one of your drivers, that can do you a few favors, and in return for getting him to do a couple of public appearances at the first Singapore night race, actually, a race that he, I think, retired from, I got a call from Mark Arnold, his personal trainer, saying that Kimi was a bit thirsty. So I managed to call the local market for Bacardi and managed to get a very nice box of Grey Goose vodka and hand delivered it to his Raffles suite in Singapore. So yes, that was one of the upsides of working for a drinks brand with an F1 champion, and a good guy, very normal, and yeah, he was there with a couple of his Finnish mates, and that was a good night, one of the highlights.
That's amazing. I love that. Tabatha, you've had some highs and lows with your racing, working with teams and things. Share a story if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I was trying to think when you asked the question. I was like trying to think which to choose. But
well, I think one of the obvious go-tos would be the time that you lent me a pair of trainers because I was wearing sandals in a pit lane, and you should always know you're not allowed to do that.
For example, so what do? I just say, yeah, give me your sandals. I'll walk in sandals and team kit, and you go on, because if not, you couldn't stay in the pit lane, right?
Yeah. Do or die moment, and your shoes saved me.
Practice session, yeah. So just there and then, I just took my shoes off. There you go. Yeah. Everyone was like, look at those two. Yeah, that would be one. But then, yeah, other ones like related to drivers and just like saying like, you see the drivers from the outside and you say, oh my God, look, but they're just like any of us, like, like just any other person. The point, like, for example, Pierre Gasly, it was at a race of champions in Mexico, but I already knew him before because I worked with him in Toro Rosso. So I knew that he was always forgetting, just like other drivers forget things. And I said to him, have you got everything? Are you ready to go to the track? Are you sure you've got everything? Your helmet, your gloves? Yeah. I've tried everything on my room. I've got everything. I've got my gloves. I've got my helmet. Okay, let's go. We get to the track. 5 minutes later, I turn around. He comes up to me and says, there's just a little problem. I'm like, oh, what is it? Let's see. Surprise me. I've got my gloves, but both of them are left-hand gloves. And I said, I thought you had tried them on in the hotel. Yes, I did, but I only tried one on, obviously the left one. I said, okay, what do I do? What do I do? Don't worry, don't worry. In the end, we found some gloves, but it just shows you, you know, the little things. They say yes, but then if you don't check little things like that, it could become, you know, because then it's like the glove has to be Puma gloves. It can't be Alpine Stars. It can't be, you know, you have to find that exact glove. But now it makes me laugh. At the time, I could have, I just looked at him like, oh my God, I had asked you before.
You do have to give a certain amount of care to your drivers. I've experienced that, I think, from my side as well. Sophie, do share.
Well, I was sat here as well trying to think of a story, but I think every funny story that I can think of definitely can't be shared. So
that's not fair.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be in a job if I did. But I think just going back to speaking to that whole, you know, the glamorous side of things, I think there is obviously that perception that it is all glamorous because that, you know, that one Instagram photo that somebody will put on from a race weekend, people kind of look at and they think that that's just what you've been doing all weekend, whereas the reality is, you know, like Adrian spoke to, you know, you've got finances, budget, you've got, you know, logistics, you're up till whatever time at night writing things, prepping things, organizing things, redoing schedules that you've probably already on version 15 of already. It's, you know, there's so much that kind of goes into it. And I think as well, working with drivers, whilst, you know, what we all want to be doing is winning, 9 times out of 10 the drivers you're working with aren't winning the race. You know, there's only ever one winner, so everybody else is managing. It's not only the team morale, but it's those personalities, and, you know, sometimes drivers have bad races, and there's a lot more sort of difficult moments, I would say, that you have to navigate kind of sensitively and carefully, and it is quite tough because you're probably feeling the same pain as well when things don't go well, and having to manage everybody else. And there's so many moments where you kind of, you'll look around and you'll think, you know, is this, I'm pretty sure this wasn't on my job description. You know, you're in the back of a truck at a rainy circuit with like wind blowing and you're trying to dress a driver. And it sounds sort of crazy when you think about it, because you normally just see the front of these like lovely photo shoots and things that happen. It's probably quite a lot of good skills for parenting, actually. It probably set me up quite well for that, because like Tabatha said, you know, you're always running to get something that somebody's forgotten, and that left-hand glove thing as well. I don't know if that's just a driver thing, because we've had that a few times in the garage where, you know, the driver's got in the car and then they've sort of come on the radio going, I've got 2 left gloves. It's like, these things just happen, and it's kind of, it's like funny moments like that you just kind of remember that there's, you know, humanizes everything. You know, there are humans behind everything that you see, and yes, there is a bit of glamour, and yes, we absolutely love it and it is fun, but you are doing a job and you need to be there and ready to kind of step in when you need to, and it could be anything. You know, it might not be a journalist asking a question, it could be something as simple as, you know, the driver needs something for something he's about to do, and you're the closest person. So yeah, it's definitely a lot going on.
Adrian.
Oh, Adrian.
Sorry. Adrian, then Liz.
I was just going to say, it's great to see so many questions, and I've tried as best I can, Jenny, to answer a few in there. I think I would just have a little reality check on expectation management. There's a lot of people saying, I want to work in Formula One. Well, last count, there's 10 head of comms roles in Formula One, probably plus the, you know, head of comms role at the organization itself. So, you know, the chances of getting those roles are very, very small. And I don't know many in their 20s who are doing those roles. You've got to start somewhere, not necessarily at the bottom, but just, I think about opportunities that you have locally. I know we've got some international guests on the webinar as well, which is fantastic to see. Think about regional championships, and just think about, you know, working with some drivers or some karting guys. You know, you never know, you might be the next PR to work with Fernando Alonso, who's, you know, 12 years old and in karting at the moment. And I think the other thing is trying to get people's attention is really difficult. I always try and get back to people because I know how frustrating it is when you send your CV or you send an email to somebody and they never get back to you. So unless you're trying to sell me SEO, I normally get back to people as much as I can. But if you want to stand out, don't just send somebody your CV, send them a tailored idea, send them a mood board, send them a video, send them a reel, send them a TikTok of what you think might work for your team or your driver. That'll certainly get you an opportunity to get in front of people.
Yeah, that really links with something I did, because that's the way I was thinking when I had been in F1 for a year, then the team went bankrupt, so I lost my job. So then I wanted to get back into F1. You know a few people, they know you know the job, but how do you get back in? So I thought, I'm not going to just do the same as I've already done, send my CV and just wait. So I decided to create a magazine. It was for Caterham at the time, explaining how a whole year, how the PR could work for a team, like giving ideas, but it was like magazine style. So it wasn't just a Word document where you just see text and you say, oh my God. It was photos designed well. And I even went personally to give it to them and read it through. So yeah, if you do different things, I think it opens a door, or at least it opens it a bit more than if you just send your CV and just sit there waiting. You need to think of different things to make people say, oh, look, they might know what we're talking about. Well, yeah,
definitely, Tabs. I also think it's, you know, it's really easy to look at it from the perspective when you're looking for a role, is like, how can you help me? But also you need to think exactly as Tabs just said, how can you help the brand, the driver, the organization, the event that you want to work with? As Adrian said, think creatively, think differently. And you don't have to be based in the UK, obviously, to work in motorsport. Motorsport is very global. As Adrian mentioned, you know, you can look at karting, you can look at young drivers, look at the racetracks. You know, every country pretty much has a racetrack. Look at the ASN, the local sporting authority for motorsport. There are always events that you can volunteer in. I've seen a few people asking about volunteering and internships. Every motorsport event will have a press office. Sometimes those press office for Formula One, for example, they from time to time look for volunteers in the media center. So there's lots of different ways that you can potentially get involved. I think that's really important. The volunteering side of things, making yourselves a little bit different as well, and not just sending an email with a kind of, how can you help me, but this is how I can help you, this is who I am, a little bit your personality and your character. And I think there've been a few questions from kind of perhaps people who are journalists at the moment but want to move into the PR side, or perhaps people who are already working in PR but not in motorsport. How do you then break into that environment? And my advice would be, if you have experience in the corporate world, look at the partners who are in motorsport, in Formula One and Formula E. Look at those partners, do your research, look into the strategy behind those partnerships. Why is that partner so heavily invested in a team or a championship or an event? And then think of some ideas that could help them get across their brand messages, and then approach. Don't just approach and hope for the best. Do a bit of groundwork first. And I would always encourage you guys, I'm like a stuck record with this, but think very, very carefully about why you want to do this. It is, like Adrian said, you know, there's very few jobs in this world, within the world of motorsport. And whilst it looks incredibly glamorous and a lot of fun, and it is an awful lot of fun, but it's also absolutely exhausting as well. So if you're someone that doesn't do well on little sleep, or someone that can't spin plates, then it's possible that you maybe need to think about something else. And that maybe sounds brutal, but I think it's very easy to glamorize what it is that we do. And a lot of the time, you know, it's like Sophie said, you could be fetching the banana for the driver before they head over to the media pen, because you know that their blood sugar levels are low because they've just done X, Y, and Z, and you know they haven't eaten for 5 hours. You need to have that kind of brain where you don't mind talking to the CEO of one of your brand partners to fetching the cup of tea or the banana because you know that one of your team members is struggling right now. That's how you become successful and an integral part of the team. You roll your sleeves up, you help with setup, you help with breakdown of the garage, you make sure that you're there, you always have a smile on your face, and you treat everybody with respect and kindness. And that's kind of, you know, that can be very testing when you haven't had much sleep and you're jet lagged.
We've had the banana WhatsApp chat in the last year in Formula E. Anybody got an emergency banana for a driver? It's absolutely true. And even if you're the head of comms, if you're the CEO, it doesn't matter. If you've got a driver like that, you need to try and help out, because performance comes first. I think the other thing from my perspective that I'm looking for in candidates and people that I work with, you know, I've been very lucky. I've had an amazing career and traveled around the world on somebody else's dime, but I'm looking for unicorns. I'm looking for people who are completely unique, who have great creative ideas and are going to work extremely hard. One of the current people that's in my team, incredibly hardworking. This is actually her first Formula E season that she's going into. She's been doing the Jaguar I-Pace E Trophy for 2 years as the media officer, and she steps up to Formula E. And she sent me a text last week saying, Adrian, just to let you know that one of the things that I'm doing in lockdown is I'm going back on YouTube and I'm watching every single race that Jaguar Racing has been in Formula E. And I was like, wow, that is incredible. That is incredible determination and commitment for somebody who wants to learn as much as she possibly can before she goes to her first race. Because we've all got to do our first race, right, at some point. So that's the level of commitment that, you know, I expect from people, and I expect, you know, that level of creativity. And you have to stand out nowadays. But the great news is there's huge opportunities. We're all on LinkedIn. We're all on Twitter. We're all on Instagram. So, you know, prepare for the influx, but, you know, slide into the DMs and reach out. But don't just say, hi, can I have a job in Formula One, please, Sophie? You know, come to us with a problem that you've solved for us.
Yeah, I think just jumping in on that as well, in terms of, you know, I get asked quite a lot about people in terms of advice for getting experience. And even as F1 teams, you know, we don't have a lot of scope for giving people meaningful work experience, because we're still a small team and half the time we're on the road. So we're not even there to really train people. And I think it goes back to, so when I first started, it wasn't about Formula One. And I think, you know, Liz has spoken and sort of alluded to that as well. You know, I was interested in motorsport, but I was interested in finding a role that involved, you know, people and media and talking and being able to understand and work with all those kind of ideas and things that I liked in the engineering side of things, but actually applying them to a skill set that I had. And I think it's really important that people actually have the skills to do the job that they're actually trying to do, and then apply it to motorsports. And I think you can get experience, like we've said, I think everyone's saying, in so many different ways. And, you know, going back to my first role, I kind of went and found a local race team because I was interested in the motorsport element and I did have a passion for that, but I wanted to learn more about the jobs. And the way I did it was I actually found, you know, they didn't have in-house people, they didn't have a PR person at all at that point, but they did have an agency that they sort of contracted to do some work for them, which was on brand and marketing and PR. So I kind of went and offered myself sort of for free just to go and help out there sort of one afternoon a week, just to kind of get inside that agency, which was, again, a small agency, just to see how it worked, to understand a little bit more about the sort of the style, the writing, all the things that kind of went with the job that I could then apply to doing it myself, and kind of took that through to all the next jobs that I went to. And I think it's a really good way, you know, when people always say, you know, there's not a lot of jobs going, but there's so many opportunities to actually get involved. I mean, like Liz and Adrian have both said it as well, in terms of whether it's finding agencies, finding sponsors that work in the sport, whether it's working for circuits, whether it's working for drivers, you know, and even like with the pandemic, you know, I've seen a couple of questions about, you know, how do you get that experience during a global pandemic when we're all trapped at home? I think there's probably still a lot of opportunities, because especially in motorsport, we're all still trying to keep kind of the cogs turning, and we're trying to operate remotely. So actually it's probably a better opportunity than ever to be able to try and support and offer your help wherever you are on the planet, whether it's helping write some material, whether it's just, you know, speaking to people to get more of an understanding of the job, whether it's doing research, whether it's doing an online course to improve your creative writing or some kind of skills, you know, build up that skill set that you can then apply to something in future. And I think, yeah, just don't make it about Formula One, and don't make it about just getting to this certain point. You know, focus on the job, because it's those people that when those CVs get put in front of us, they're the people that kind of stand out, and they're the people that jump out.
And we have so many questions coming through. Thank you for answering them online. If you do want to ask a question, go to Q&A function. I have to say thanks to our sponsors as well, and New Channel Media, video production for motorsport. If you want to check them out, you can go to newchannelmedia.com. And we love to get your messages, and you can use the hashtag MMW2021 if you are on social media. So let's try and answer as many questions as we possibly can. I'm going to run through lots of them if possible. So I'll start with Mariana Ruiz, who says, thank you for speaking to us. Question is, with so many people trying to break into motorsport media and PR, what's the best way to make yourself stand out? And I appreciate we've spoken a little bit about this, but it's the question that just keeps coming back. So who wants to go with this one? About Liz, go for it. How does one make themselves stand out amongst the crowd?
I'd echo what Adrian said previously with regards to kind of looking very carefully about individual organizations or brands, coming up with some ideas and suggestions, creating a mood board, creating a written piece or a photographic piece, but something that you feel encapsulates your ideas or your visions. Come with something in hand. Don't just go looking for a job. And reiterating that the social networks, in particular LinkedIn, for job opportunities are absolutely fantastic. Nearly all of the head of media, head of communications for the teams are on LinkedIn, and you can reach out that way, but come with something in your pocket and stay authentic. Don't try and twist yourself into what you think another person is looking for. Find a team where you can align your values already, that you can see some synergies. It's hard at the start of your career because you don't necessarily know what you stand for personally, but when you feel something in your stomach that feels good or doesn't feel so right, I would urge you really to listen to that, because that's one thing that's always stood me very well in my career, has been my gut instincts. If something doesn't feel right, generally speaking, it's not right, and vice versa. If it feels fantastic, there's probably a really good reason why it does. So learn to trust your instincts a little bit when you're looking at different potential teams or partners to work with. I would say stay authentic.
Yeah, I think as well, just to add to that, don't underestimate what you can bring as well. Like when, even people that are applying to jobs at an F1 team, we're looking for people to add something that we don't have. We never claim to say that we have got everything right and we have everything that we need. We're always looking. Like, things are changing so much at the moment, the whole world is changing, but in social media, creativity, content, like all these different areas that now come into sort of comms and PR that weren't even there 10-20 years ago. So like, sell yourself. Don't feel bad about telling us what it is that we will benefit from having you as part of our team, because that's what we want to know. We want to know what you can bring, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those people. And like you say, come with some ideas, come with a suggestion of something we could be doing, come with a suggestion of something that you could do that we're not currently doing, or something that you think we could do in a slightly different way, or something we might not have thought about before, and show why you can actually deliver that, whether it's the skills, whether it's the experience. It doesn't have to be 20 years of experience. We look to bring people in at the bottom and hopefully help as well, sort of nurture people's careers, but we want to see that people have taken the initiative and done something. It doesn't have to be everything, but just something to show what it is that they can bring.
It's not only something you need to do at the start. Like now we're saying, how to get into F1, you need to do it like this, you need to bring something. I even do it like now, like even that's my everyday. I look at things, I think of ideas, I think, where could this work, or the other way around. I think of a driver, I think of an idea, I think what he likes, or a team, because each team is different. And then, because I remember at the beginning, I used to get lots of advice of people saying just this, and I was like thinking, how do you do it? Like, what are they saying? How do you get to think of something different? But it just comes to you. You just need to think, what do you want to do? What can you bring that's new? And then start looking around. If you sit there without even thinking and just sending CVs, it's never going to happen. You need to be the first one to look around, think of ideas, and then it all comes to you. I promise you. It sounds like, she's just saying it to say, but it really does. It even happens to me now every day when I'm just sitting around, and then, or maybe I'm just like in the shower and I get an idea. I'm like, oh my God, wait, this could work. And you just need to start working on that initial idea that then in the end becomes something. And when it becomes something, you feel so good, really, really good.
I'm really passionate about brands and media and how they work. And I think one piece of advice in terms of, yeah, standing out, be creative, but have a wide knowledge base. You know, I'm fascinated by what Gymshark are doing, by what Netflix are doing, what Rolex are doing, what's happening in the NBA. You know, maybe I don't like those sports, maybe I don't like those brands, but I'm fascinated to know what they're doing and what I can learn from them, what I can steal from them. So I think that's a really key one as well. You know, you have to try and have an information filter where you're looking and you're reading, but you're learning from that and you're applying it to your job and your team. You know, yesterday I was reading about one of the actors in Star Wars that got sacked yesterday. Now, what's that got to do with motorsport? Well, absolutely nothing. But actually, what it does tell you is that somebody who was quite outspoken on social media perhaps got into a little bit of trouble and it cost her job. Now, that could apply to one of my drivers. If one of my drivers says something on social media that they shouldn't. Now, one of the things that I'm keen to do, and I'm sure Liz and Sophie are keen to do, is not to have robots as drivers. You know, I want my drivers to have personalities. But actually, it's just about setting some guardrails for people, especially on social media, which can be incredibly dangerous.
It's a game of cat and mouse, with the journalists always trying to chase a story, trying to find something that we can write up that's a little bit out of the ordinary, that isn't just PR speak, and you guys protecting your brand, protecting your drivers, and coming up with creative answers to problems. Lucy Rimmer has got in touch and she says, do you have a memorable email or application that stood out to you? Adrian, can I come to you for that one? Have you, you know, if someone was trying to come up with, is there one that springs to mind?
In terms of a creative idea?
Yeah, I think so.
Not one that necessarily springs to mind, but I think one of the fallacies that I see at the moment is people saying that they're social media experts. Well, nobody's a social media expert because it's not been going long enough. You know, if people say, well, I'm a social expert, well, what about Clubhouse? Well, it's been, you know, it's okay, it's been going for a year, but you may have just joined. So I want you to have an opinion on it. I want you to think if it's something that a brand should appear on, if a driver should appear on, what are the benefits of that? What are the disadvantages of that? So I think, again, it's about just having that wide knowledge that you can draw on, which is going to be relevant for you and your job. But again, what I'm looking for are people who are going to pull my shirt and say, Adrian, I've got this great idea for an Instagram reel or an Instagram story or an Instagram takeover. And I employ, you know, a lot of young people to help me do that because, you know, I'm a grey-haired, middle-aged white person. So I need people with different perspectives. And I love people that challenge and say, actually, maybe we should be doing a bit more of this and a bit more of that. And again, follow your passion. You know, in E-Trophy, we were incredibly lucky to promote women in motorsport and giving people the opportunity to have drives. You know, one of the things that I'm most proud of is being able to lead a team which gave Rima Jafali the first opportunity to drive in Saudi Arabia in her first, you know, her first race at home in Saudi. That was incredible a couple of years ago. And because it was a history-making thing, it got lots of nice coverage. And, you know, she's an amazing driver and it was a privilege to work with her. So those are the things that keep us alive. And as Sophie said, the world is changing and you have to be really plugged into the cultural thermometer and the barometer of what's going on in the world. And you can't be all things to all people. You can't be the most diverse team, the most sustainable team, but you can have an opinion. And I think that's important. And I think also from a brand perspective, you know, I work for Jaguar Land Rover, which is a huge privilege. You know, it's a company that was winning 7 times in Le Mans, and I feel incredibly lucky that I'm holding that baton, but I'll only hold it for a little while before I pass it on to somebody else. But for brands, reputation is very important, and for consumers, you know, having a purpose now is absolutely fundamental to, you know, your buying regulations and what you do as a buyer.
Liz.
Just to go back to that question that Lucy had, for me, a memorable email was actually a young lady who rewrote one of our team press releases, not a native English speaker, but the way in which she rewrote it and she formatted it was so exciting to me. And I loved that. And I think, you know, it kind of alludes to something that all of us have said so far. We like to be questioned and challenged. That's really important. As Sophie said, we don't have all the answers. We're all human beings and we're all learning, and we can only ever come from our own personal perspective. So I think if you see something from a team or a driver or a brand in motorsport or an event, if you see something you think that's great, but it could be better like this, or have you thought about doing it like that? I think don't be frightened. It's a common theme that we keep coming back to here. Don't be frightened to then approach that potential rights holder and show them how you would have done it, because that shows initiative, which is really important in our world, but it shows confidence, and confidence in our world. If you want to work in media, confidence is essential. You can't be a wallflower. You can't be shy with your ideas. You don't want to go too far and step into arrogance either, but confidence is essential. And there's one other small thing that I would say, just coming back on the social media point that Adrian touched on. Think very, very carefully if you want to be involved in the world of media, full stop. This doesn't just apply to motorsport, but think very carefully on your own personal social media channels about how you project yourself, because this will be one of the places where potential employers look to find out how you represent yourself. So think very carefully about how you communicate your beliefs. And that doesn't mean don't stand for anything, stand for everything that you want to stand for, but think very carefully about the way that you engage with people on social media. And just know every comment, every post, everything, it's there and people can see it. So remember that somebody like me who's potentially looking for somebody will look at that, and I will form, even if it's an educated judgment, but I'll form an opinion on you based on your posts. And I think that's something that people perhaps forget. In the heat of the moment, they might feel passionately about something, they might forget that. So just remember that's your shop window to the world.
There are so many questions coming in and we're never going to get through them all, and I'm sorry for that, but I will try and pass the questions on to our panel so that they can get in touch with you. So if you do want to maybe email in, then you can do, just remember it's info@mmw2020@gmail.com. A lot of the themes are similar when it comes to your questions, which makes it slightly easier for us to answer you. But one of them that keeps coming up is about your location. If you aren't lucky enough to live round the corner from Silverstone or a team, maybe you're in a country that doesn't have a huge amount of motorsport, what's the best way in? Tabatha, there are some questions in for you because obviously you're not based around the corner from Silverstone, but yet you work with those teams, so it's not so much of a limitation.
Yeah, no, and like I'm Spanish. I lived in Spain until I moved to England, to then move to Italy, and now I'm in Italy. But yeah, I don't think that's a problem. I mean, and nowadays with all the internet connections and everything, that's not of a problem. And anyway, apart from the fact that, like, okay, yeah, I work with many people that are in the UK, but again, it goes back to just talking to people, getting in contact with people, and it all starts from there, I think.
Yeah, networking is key.
And I think there's opportunities though in this global pandemic for remote working. My social media guy is based in Spain at the moment. His parents live there. He stayed out after Valencia because it was easier for travel. So I think actually now that gives opportunities. You know, this pandemic has been terrible for so many people, but in there somewhere there are some small opportunities.
I would say, Jenny, just quickly, just to answer a couple of the questions about the English language. It's absolutely not essential for English to be your first language. Obviously, that's something that we've already touched upon. But I would say, as kind of the general international language of motorsport is English, a good foundation in English is a fantastic place to start. So, you know, because when you're talking with journalists, when you're talking with your team members, and when you're briefing people, having English, I mean, it all depends on the team that you're going to be working with. There are many non-English speaking nationality teams, but with the media in general, you will find yourself exposed to people speaking English. So it's a really good place to start. Not essential, but I would say it's a good place to start to open up your opportunities.
Tabatha, we have had many requests from people for two things from you. First of all, they want to see your hedgehog. And second of all, they want to know the story about Carlos's birthday meerkat, because your meerkat featured on the little poster for this.
Yeah.
So I don't know, whichever you prefer to do first, I'd like both of those from you, please.
I'll start with the meerkat story because I need to wake him up, the hedgehog.
Oh no, that feels mean now. I'm sorry.
Used to it. I do it all the time. So yeah, no. Imagine if I ever have kids, I'll be waking them up. Yeah. So the meerkat story started. Carlos loves meerkats, and at the beginning when I started working with him, I had no idea about that until his first birthday, where he said he'd love a meerkat for his birthday, and I looked at him like, "What are you saying? Are you crazy? I do want a meerkat for your birthday." And it just like that was the first joke. So then the next year in Australia, we took him to the zoo to meet the meerkats, and he was really happy, like a late birthday present. And then that same year for his birthday, I adopted a meerkat from a zoo and I put it to his name. So now he has a meerkat in a zoo near London to his name. But then the third year, that's the meerkat in the photo that you used. We actually bought a meerkat into the paddock together with Noemi from Movistar from Spanish TV. We brought him a meerkat into the paddock. So for all the Thursday afternoon, he had a meerkat together with him. And of course, who had to look after him because he just took a photo and then, yeah, there you go, nice meerkat, but please, can you take it? So I was with the whole meerkat for the whole afternoon, just in case Carlos wanted to see the meerkat, and then we sent him back to home. But yeah, that's the story of the meerkat. I'm talking about
let's hope animal welfare aren't listening to this too closely.
No. He's just woken up, so he might be.
You can't compete with this, Jenny.
No, I know. Look.
Hello.
Now tell us a little bit about your hedgehog.
So he's called piede, which means foot in Italian, because he has gigantic feet. See?
Oh, look.
No, the story is like, it links to all what we've said. I started working in motorsport and I was like away from home since I was 20 years old. So I've never had time, like normal things. Like my friends look at me and say like, I don't know, learn how to play tennis. I've never had the time to do that. I've never had the time to have an animal. Like, you know, it's silly things that people look at you and say, what have you done your whole life? But it's true. Motorsport and F1 and everything, this takes your life away. So now that I'm more time at home because I can work more from home, I don't need to go to as many races as I did before. Together with my boyfriend who also travels a lot, we said, come on, let's get an animal. But we're not normal. We don't get your usual dog or a cat. We go for a hedgehog. No, because it's the animal we used to find where we go to the beach here in Italy. It's full of them at night, and we always used to like look for them. So we decided, why not have our own hedgehog? So here he is.
There we go. I love Tabs. She is absolutely one of the best people.
Got his Instagram if you want to follow him.
Oh yes, that's true. He's on Insta, and my daughter loves watching the videos of him on Insta. Right, we've got to wrap things up because as ever we could talk all day, but we can't because we know Adrian has a very boring meeting that he has to go to. So let's wrap things up. If each of you could just, I don't know, give a word of advice or something that people can take away from this, because that's what we want. We want takeaways from it, because that's like the modern thing. So Liz, let's come to you first.
Follow your heart. If you really want it, be prepared to work hard, but follow your heart and trust your instincts.
I love that. You could do that in tapestry and put it into like a pillow or something.
What I'll be doing this afternoon when Adrian's on his phone call.
Adrian, give us something to take away.
I'm a big fan of the rule of three, which if you work in communications, you'll know all about. Politicians use it all the time. So the three takeaways for me are: build relationships, be a problem solver, and keep learning.
Good. Tabatha.
Yeah, I followed it my whole life. Never give up.
Sophie.
Yeah, I think it echoes a lot of what's been said, but don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't do something. If you are passionate and you are strong-willed and you want to achieve something, there is nothing that hard work can't help you achieve. So yeah, work hard, get experience, meet people, network, and yeah, don't ever let anyone say that it's not possible.
Jenny, can I just say one final thing? Which is, I think a lot of credit should go to you. I think they should give you an Autosport award or something for what you're doing. I genuinely believe that, because I think that I would really have benefited from something like this when I was growing through the ranks, and full credit to you. Well done. I'm a big believer in, you know, when you're at the top, you should send the lift down for the next person, and you've done that. So well done.
Oh, that's very kind. Well, this all just started because, let's face it, everybody in life needs a little bit of motivation, a little bit of advice and guidance. And I know there are so many students, especially out there, finding this really daunting. Lockdown has isolated them. It's taken away the opportunities they thought they had. So for us to be able to just say, you know what, there is still a light there. And if you're creative and if you want to get into this ridiculous industry, then there's still a chance and an opportunity. Don't let that be taken away from you. As Tab says, just keep on trying. Tabs, come on, give us a bit more.
Always have a pair of shoes, just in case someone like Jenny needs them.
In fairness, that could be any clothing. At times, it's a disaster. Like 2 left gloves. Right, I'm going to end things there. Thank you so much for your time, everybody on the panel, and for all our participants. It's been a real pleasure hearing all your questions. We'll try and answer some more when we go offline. And if you're watching this on YouTube as a replay, then please do feel free to get in touch. As I said, it's info@2020@gmail.com. But from all of us here, good luck, don't give up, and bye for now.